These are the Perlisten S5Ms. These are the first THX Dominus speakers that you can get. Shout out to Perlisten for sending these out for me to review and to check out. On the bottom of the speaker, you're gonna see little inserts for the dedicated speaker stands. First off, let's take a quick look at the back. But here, this is a bi-wireable speaker. These are rhodium plated. But on the front here, we've got two 7-inch mid-range woofers. And in the center portion here, we've got 3 drivers. We've got a 1-inch beryllium dome tweeter and these 1-inch drivers here, which handle the mid-range. I think the frequency response is 20 to 20K. I think the in-room response is something like 39 Hertz. Size-wise, this is 23.5 inches tall by 9.5 inches wide by 15.5 inches deep. And this speaker weighs 42 pounds. Actually, I think it's like 41.5 pounds. This is not a tower speaker. This is the S7C. Let's go ahead and get this thing unboxed. In case you couldn't tell, it's a heavy speaker. This is 74 pounds. On the front, we've got 4 7-inch drivers with the cool little Perlisten checkerboard pattern on there. On the front here, we've got 2 mid-rangers, 1-inch beryllium dome tweeter, and the speaker does have a frequency response of 38 to 37K. It's got in-room response up down to like 32 Hertz. So the speaker's got some pretty potent bass. Well, the center channel's got some pretty potent bass. On the rear, we've got some rhodium plated bi-wired connections here. So you can bi-wire this if you want. The top is the high frequency and the bottom is the low frequency. So tweeters and then the bass. And if you wanted to mount these, it looks like these are pre-drilled for some mounts as well. Size-wise, it's really big. It's about 37 inches wide by 9.5 inches tall by 16 inches deep. So this is a big, giant center speaker. But let's go on and move on to the next speaker that we're gonna check out today. This one, I've already unboxed. But this is the S4S. It's got the same 7-inch woofer with this checkerboard pattern. It's got the same driver complement here as well. It's got 2 mid-range, the 1-inch beryllium dome tweeter. Frequency response for this is 39 Hertz to 37K. Around back, same connections. Well, this is upside down. But you do get 1 set of binding posts here, and it's also pre-drilled if you want to use the mounting bracket, or it's got a keyhole slot as well. Nice little design touch is if you're going to mount this on your wall, it has a little notch. So once this lays flat on your wall, you can run the cable through the little notch so it lays flat on your wall. And the back is covered in this nice rubber finish so it doesn't slide on your wall or anything like that. This is 16 inches tall by 9.5 inches wide by 7 inches deep at its deepest point. And this does have a wedge design. So if you're going to mount it on your wall, like say as a side speaker or a back speaker, you'd mount it on your wall like so, and then this would angle downwards at your listening position. Or I would assume if you wanted to also mount this on your ceiling as like an ATMOS speaker, you can have it kind of aiming at your listening seat. But now we're gonna move on to the big boy. This is the D212 subwoofer. Let's take a quick look at the front. There's a 12-inch driver. There's actually 2 12-inch drivers here. So there's one on the front and one on the bottom. So if we take a look right on the bottom here, right behind this grill is another 12-inch driver. So this is in a push-pull configuration. Size-wise, it's 26 inches tall by 16 inches wide by 21 inches in depth. So it's a big subwoofer. And on the top here, there's an LCD display to control all of the subwoofer's functions. And there's an iOS and Android app as well, which you can control the EQ mode, the volume level, the crossovers. I believe there's a 10-band PEQ and some other general settings, which we'll take a look at in the full subwoofer review. Around back, we've got some connections. We've got your service port connector, we've got a trigger input, we've got your unbalanced ins and outs, your balanced XLR ins and outs, if you want to daisy chain 2 of these together, your main power switch, and then your power cord input. And this is powered by a 3000 watt amplifier. Frequency response for this, there's 3 different EQ modes. There's the small EQ mode, which is 24 hertz. There's a large room EQ, which goes down to 15 hertz, and then the THX mode goes down to 20 hertz. So I got two of these monsters in. I'm gonna go ahead, we're gonna get these all set up in the theater. Two subs, the center channel, two surrounds, and then two of the S5M monitors. So let's go ahead and get this thing set up.
I'm going to be putting the speakers in my dedicated theater. The center is going to be placed under my screen and the surrounds will be placed adjacent to my seats, slightly above ear level. I'll have one sub in the front left corner and the other in the opposite rear corner. The speakers are going to be powered by a pair of McIntosh amps with processing done with a turn-off altitude. I'll be using a Zapiti signature media player and a Kaleidoscape for demo material. I'll also be running some demos with the subwoofers active with an 80Hz crossover per the THX spec, since these are THX speakers. I'm also going to be running the same demos without the subwoofers and letting the speakers run full range, setting only levels and delays. I like this approach because it lets me hear how dynamic the speakers are without the help of any subwoofers. The first demo we're going to check out is Underwater on the Kaleidoscape. It's got a 5.1 mix with some amazing directional effects and ambiance with a demo-worthy bass response. The first thing I noticed was how well the speakers produced the cold, empty atmosphere in the bathroom. It felt enclosed and also felt like the droplets of water were coming above my head, despite not having active height channels. On a lesser performing speaker, the soundstage would collapse into that speaker, making it sound like the effects were coming in their respective locations. With the Perlistens, each speaker blended flawlessly together to create a three-dimensional transparent virtual bubble. I can only imagine if I had more speakers, it'd be even better. When the action abruptly starts, the front channels can instantly kick into high gear without any strain or distortion. The bass response from the front three speakers are as visceral as some of the smaller 10-inch subs that I've had in here for review. Of course, your mileage will vary depending on how big your space is. The S5Ms have such fast attack and filled out the bottom end amazingly, and this is without a subwoofer. What's even more impressive was feeling the bass from the explosion come directly at me from the center channel. Having a center as capable as the main speakers is a must-have, so don't skip out on the center if you don't have to. Now, the surround channels aren't as impactful bass-wise as the front channels, but that was to be expected given their size, but they did a great job in filling in the atmosphere. If you have a small to medium-sized room and can't fit a subwoofer, the bass from the speakers on their own should make anyone happy, but once you do add the D212 subwoofers into the mix, not only does the soundstage deepen, but the 20 Hz and below response will loosen up anything you don't have screwed down. I do have a separate video on the subwoofers, which I will link in this video's description. Next, we're going to check out A Quiet Place Part 2 on the Kaleidoscape. This is a great mix that should disappear, leaving your room sounding like it's outside. Beryllium dome tweeters are my favorite type of tweets, when done right, and they got them right in these speakers. What I heard was crisp air and detail in this mix. There's insects and other environmental noises that seem to reach for miles beyond the speaker's physical locations. I was even able to make out all the nuanced sound effects at lower volumes as much as I could at reference levels. So, for late night viewing, I never felt like I needed to crank the volume to get a satisfying surround effect. These also have a huge horizontal soundstage that sounded great whether I was in the center seat or in a corner seat. Next, we're going to pop in Gravity on Blu-ray. During the opening chapter, you'll hear a dialogue between Clooney and Sandra Bullock where their voices move through different speakers.
So, what is this scanning system?
It's designed for hospital use, but this one's a prototype. Stand by for locking.
Listen, they don't bankroll prototypes, even for your pretty blue eyes.
Well, my eyes are brown. Mm-hmm.
So, what is this scanning system?
It's designed for hospital use, but this one's a prototype. Stand by for locking.
Listen, they don't bankroll prototypes, even for your pretty blue eyes.
Well, my eyes are brown.
Ideally, with the tamper match setup, their voices should sound exactly the same in every spot, and these guys nailed it. The mid-range clarity and vocal presence carried through each speaker with equal weight. There were no gaps between each pan, and I never struggled to comprehend what each character was saying. Once we added the subwoofers, they were able to pick up the ultra-low-end bumps when Sandra was using the drill. The speakers on their own weren't able to produce that type of bottom end. Once the subs are dialed in using their built-in PEQ, I was able to get clean pressure across all my seats and a perfect blend with the other speakers. Since this is the most impressive center channel I've had in my space, I wanted to hear how it handled a movie with some tweeter distorting dialogue and a movie that's got a hefty amount of bass in the center channel. So we're going to check out the rocket takeoff in Interstellar.
I gave him a humor setting so he'd fit in better with his unit. He thinks it relaxes us.
A giant, sarcastic robot. What a great idea.
I have a cue light I can use when I'm joking, if you like.
That'd probably help.
Yeah, you can use it to find your way back into the ship after I blow you out the airlock.
As a comparison, let's check out how the Focal Canta 3 center channel handles the scene. It also has a beryllium tweeter.
I gave him a humor setting so he'd fit in better with his unit. He thinks it relaxes us.
A giant, sarcastic robot. What a great idea.
I have a cue light I can use when I'm joking, if you like.
That'd probably help.
Yeah, you can use it to find your way back into the ship after I blow you out the airlock.
The Canta speakers are no slouches, but I think it's pretty easy to hear how that speaker breaks up and becomes glaringly harsh. The Perlistens took it like a champ, which a lot of centers have a tough time with. The bass response was also impressive. If a movie soundtrack has an abundance of low end in the center, that can really elevate vocals and effects. If a car is driving from left to right, you don't want that engine to sound like a V8 in the left speaker, then a lawnmower in the center, then back to a V8 in the right. You want it to carry the same weight across the entire front stage. The 7C, whether it's crossed at 80 or lower or even full range, kept up with the S5Ms tonally for a seamless match. I'd say it's the best center channel I've heard in my theater yet.
The might of the final order will soon be ready. It will be yours if you do as I ask.
At the time of this video, the S7C center channel sells for $64.95. The S5M monitors are $64.95 each, the S4S surrounds are $39.95 each, and the S212D subs are $69.95 each. I know what you're thinking. These aren't the most affordable speakers out there, and I'd have to agree. But this is one of those situations in you get what you pay for. Subjectively speaking, these rank right at the top of all the home theater speakers that I've personally tested in my space. The only other system I'd consider as impressive would be the Focal Sopra setup, which is nearly the same price, and those are some well-regarded speakers, although the Perlisten subs demolish any of the Focal subs. That being said, as a whole in this configuration, I found the system to be an extremely clean, high-resolving experience. The tonal balance was cohesive across all the channels, which led to perfect audio movement when effects would pan throughout the different speakers. The only time I noticed a difference in sound characteristic was when I was running the speakers full range. The surround channels just didn't have the same low-end impact as the front channels. In a perfect setup, I'd probably go with S5Ms in every location, but that would require a pretty large space. And if you're crossing over at 80 Hz, then you don't have to worry about anything. Plus, how many people are running all their speakers full range, right? If you are, then leave a comment and let me know. I found mid-range clarity superb in every location, so when those voices were bouncing through different channels, they had such a clean forward presence, which really made the dialogue come through. On some other speakers that I've heard, specifically the surrounds, the dialogue would tend to sound thin when the voices would move to the surround channels. So this goes back to that cohesiveness and the excellent timbre matching of the Perlistens. The top-end clarity from those beryllium dome tweeters are so detailed, and at no point ever sounded bright or harsh or worse, ever broke up as in that Interstellar demo. That to me is huge if you're listening at spirited levels. They take each one of the speakers and made them sonically vanish, so that all you're left with is the environment that you're seeing and hearing on screen. As a whole, this is a very neutral sounding system that I didn't find leaned in any specific direction. It wasn't too bottom heavy, it wasn't too bright, and to my ears, it was balanced through and through. Now, I did do a full review on the subwoofers in a separate video, so if you want more info on those, I'll leave a link for that video in this video's description. But I will say the subs and these speakers are truly endgame status. If you're in the market for the last speakers you'll ever buy, I'd highly advise you give the Perlisten speakers an audition in your home theaters. Plus, they're equally killer for a 2-channel setup as well. So those are my thoughts on the Perlisten system. Have you guys heard of Perlisten's setup? And if you have, what'd you think of the performance? Leave a comment and let me know. As always guys, thanks for watching. Like the video if you found it useful, and if you'd like additional content or want to support the channel even further, then stop by our Patreon page. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you again in the next video.